We are almost live on YouTube. All right. Well, hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Black Expat Experience, a podcast highlighting the lived experiences of Black expats around the world. I am Kendall Tyson, hello, everyone, your host, and welcome, licensed therapist and fellow Black expat. We have a great episode in store for you today. I would like to first introduce these amazing women from all over the world. We call ourselves, so far, the Black Global Counselors Collective. We'll get into more of that. And yeah, we'll give everybody the opportunity to introduce herself, and we will get into this very timely, in-depth, and relevant panel discussion about the lived experiences of Black women, specifically clinicians that work internationally. So, who wants to go first? And panel discussion about the lived experiences of Black women, specifically clinicians that work internationally. So, who wants?
So I could go ahead. My name is Anita.
Yeah, so this is live, y'all. So I'm just gonna disclaimer, I suck with technology. So let's go with Anita first.
Yeah. My name is Anita Hughes. I'm so happy to be here this morning and afternoon for some. I am by profession a clinical social worker, and I've worked from the U.S. in the public schools, in adoption, and in a broad range of genres for social work. And I am currently in Doha, Qatar. And in a school here as a counselor, I kind of transitioned from being a clinical social worker for 30 years in the school system. I retired and decided that I was going to come to internationally and practice in school.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much, Anita, for joining us today.
You're welcome.
Sherry Lee, you want to go next?
Yeah, no problem. So I am Sherry Lee Galloway. I am also in Doha, Qatar. I am trained as a child and adolescent psychotherapeutic counselor back in the UK. I'm originally from Zimbabwe and spent half of my life in Zimbabwe and the other half in the UK before moving over to the Middle East, where I'm working also as a school counselor and setting up a counseling practice across some schools here. I'm equally as happy to have met Kendall and happy to be here too.
Oh, thank you, Sherry Lee. Taylor.
Good morning. Good morning. My name is Taylor Cobb, and I am coming to you all from South Africa. Again, to echo what everybody said, I am extremely happy to be here as well. I'm originally from the US in Wisconsin. However, I lived in Chicago for 9 years prior to going international. I started in Shanghai, China, was there for 4 years, and now I've been in South Africa for 3. This is going on my 3rd year. I am a trained school counselor, have always been a school counselor. This is my 13th year, which is crazy, but I'm excited to be here as well, and welcome.
Thank you, Taylor. I did not know you lived in China.
I think you forgot.
Oh, man. I'm going to be just like you and be out of here.
Yeah. Yes.
And Miss Jamie.
Hello, thank you for having us today. My name is Jamie Ladon Roya. I'm originally from Houston, Texas, currently in Doha, Qatar. I've been here for 6 years. I started out as a high school English teacher, and then I transitioned to school counseling. And now being international is just, I think I've got the bug now, so I want to stay international. So I'm not sure exactly what's next, but I will be leaving Doha, Qatar and continuing to be an international school counselor. Thank you again for having us today.
You are so welcome, and thank you. So Jamie and I are both from Texas and both used to be English teachers, and obviously are both international counselors, like all the fabulous women here. And I just want to say thank you again for all of you lovely ladies for joining me on the Black Expat Experience today, so that we can show the world that we thrive and live abundantly everywhere, and we change people's lives for the better. And I just want to give a little, insight for those who are tuning in or who will listen later about how we all were able to connect. So there's this organization called ISCA, the International School Counselor Association, and the world is opened up, borders are open, we're going back to conferences again, thank God. And we all met in Bangkok was that March?
Mm-hmm.
Oh my goodness, that was just March? Ooh, in March. And so as the conference is going on, and one of the things I said to myself is I'm gonna be intentional about connecting and meeting good people. And God let me do that, right? So we're walking in, we're seeing people. Jamie and I had connected previously through the app that they were using, Hoover. And I think the first person that I met outside of the app was Sherry Lee in the bathroom, because the daggone sink, the little thing wouldn't work. It don't scan brown people's skin. So, she let me use the sink because the water was working. And then we just start collecting people. I think I saw Taylor outside while we were on a break. And I think Anita, I forgot how we met. I don't know if you were connected to Jamie or you joined us.
Sherry Lee. Sherry Lee. Yeah.
So needless to say, we just started collecting like-minded, outstanding Black women that I'll go with like-minded and don't want to be tokenized. And I'll leave that right there. So we have another amazing individual in our group, Q. She's doing some personal stuff today, big ups and blessings to her. But we were just able to, it was just like this synergy, like this instant synergy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Laughing and sitting together and talking and just being able to be free. And everybody noticed it. And baby, the looks that we got from folks walking around together. And one of the missions that we had, or we decided, was if there were, Black presenters, Black women presenters, we showing up. We showed up as a group, supported, participated. I think that's how we met Chineme. That's how we met Tara. I'm not missing anybody, am I?
Dr. Tiffany.
Tiffany. Oh, yeah. Deneen. I'm gonna miss somebody. I don't want to miss anyone. But it was just like this all weekend. We just kept collecting women and showing up for each other. And it felt, I'll just speak for myself, it felt like such a healing experience. I think for all of us coming from separate places, maybe even in the same countries or cities, but separate schools and having very different experiences, but very similar experiences. And so that's part of what led me to want to do this panel discussion today, is to help illuminate the world. One, there are opportunities for us to thrive internationally and to make money doing it, depending on where you are, right? And maybe if money is not the motivation because you can work anywhere, maybe it's peace of mind. Maybe it's safety. Maybe it is immersing yourself in a new culture. Maybe it is growing your skill set. The opportunities abound. So I think one of the first questions that I'd like to pose to the panel is, share with the world, what was your motivation for moving abroad? Anybody can go.
So for me, I remember sitting at clear as day. This was 6 years ago, or 7 years ago. And I was sitting in my office and I felt like I had hit a ceiling as a counselor. And I was like, I need something different. I was burned out. I was working for Houston ISD at that time, burned out, wanted something different. And I got an email about an advertisement for a job fair for Dubai. And it's from a friend and her husband that had been living in Egypt for a couple of years. And I was like, I never thought about going international. Let's go for it. And so from there, I created my profile on Teachaway. And then it just started rolling like rapidly. And I'm one of those people that believe when things happen rapid like that, when you send a prayer up and then it comes in, it's from God. He's like, okay, you ready? You ready to move? Let's go. And so I always say I wish I would have done it sooner, but I don't know that I would have been mentally, or my maturity would have been ready to do it sooner. So I think it was right on time. But it's literally one of the best decisions I've made in my life thus far, to be able to step out on faith, do something completely out of the box. I'm very in the box, follow the rules, don't do anything, weird. Make sure you stay safe and comfortable with your career. I feel like our parents kind of instilled that in us because that's what they, desired for us. But yeah, it was just one of those things where I knew in Houston, I had kind of hit a ceiling. And so I wanted to be able to expand and grow as a professional. And so the international sector called my name.
Thank you for sharing that.
I'll go
Anyone
next.
Okay.
So I actually was working as a self-employed counselor, which I think they call a peripatetic counselor in the UK, where I was working in different agencies and different schools. I was literally like in a different town every day. So I used to drive sometimes 2-3 hours back and forth to different schools. And I remember, like Jamie, I was very burnt out. And I remember thinking, I can't do this anymore. This is really exhausting and really taxing. And I remember praying about it. So I got up, I was having devotion and I prayed about it. And then I just opened my laptop afterwards and I went on some websites and I just put like different reminders to like pop up for international jobs. I literally didn't care where I was going to go. So I applied, I remember that specific day applying to 5 different countries. Honestly, just was like, I just know I need to get out. And I think I was ready for something new and something different. I'd always been interested in traveling. And I thought, well, why would I just travel for work? And so I remember getting a few back and I literally just responded to the first one. The process took a lot longer than I expected. And I thought, maybe this is not what I'm meant to be doing. I honestly didn't even know where Qatar was. I hadn't looked it up until maybe like an hour before my flight. I literally was just like living on the edge, which is not something I was always or often do. But I remember just feeling this absolute peace, like everything else around in my life was just so, I wouldn't say chaotic, but it was just shifting. And, but the one thing I had peace about was this move and moving internationally. And I think my parents, would always just kind of roll their eyes because every other week I'm like, I'm moving to Korea, I'm moving to Japan, I'm moving to Hawaii. And they're like, okay, what part of the world are you moving to today? And I said, actually, I'm moving to Qatar. And they were like, and I don't think they realized how serious I was this time. And so when I did do it, I was like, oh goodness. And I remember jumping on the plane and just being like, what have I done? Like, this is just not talk anymore. Like, there's nobody waiting for me at this place that I don't even know about. But it was definitely one of the biggest moves I've made in my life. And sometimes I also wish I had done it earlier, but I realize everything happens in its time and when it's meant to in your life. And it's just been one of the most scary, most exciting, most heart-wrenching, emotional journeys I've ever been on. And I've learned to like embrace all the learning that's happened as a result of that.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Who wants to go next?
I can go next. For me, I think there's a reoccurring trend. I was in Chicago public schools. I was burnt out. But I literally had a life in Chicago. Like I had my friends, my family was close. I had a house. I bought a house, which was one of my goals. So I was settled in Chicago. And then I had a couple of friends who were abroad. One of my high school partner, he went abroad initially straight away after he graduated from college. So I knew the international world in that way. And then my best friend, actually, a couple of years later, he connected her and got her a job in Egypt. So she went abroad shortly after that. So I'm here, I was in Chicago, she was in Egypt, eventually met her husband, moved to London. And while she was in London, she sent me a job posting because previously she was in Shanghai. She taught in Shanghai for 1 year. And she said, my old school is hiring for a counselor. You should apply for this. And I was like, yeah. Yes, it sounds amazing. However, I have this house. What am I going to do with my mortgage? I got a 401k, like I have everything here. Ironically, that was the year that it was an election year. And so I said, okay, I didn't realize that it was actually going to happen, but I was like, okay, I will put in an application and see where the stars align. And if Trump gets elected, then I will consider going abroad. I will consider it. So the interview process actually happened around the election time and when he got into office, when he got voted into office, I guess. And I was like, am I really gonna do this? I had talked to my family. My mother actually was sick. So I hadn't gone, I would have gone probably abroad earlier in life, but my mother got sick in my early 20s. So I thought it would be good to stay around. But at that time, I was comfortable with leaving my family. I guess maybe it was God. Maybe God let me be comfortable with it. But Trump got into office. I got everything worked quick. Very, very quickly. They told me I had a day and a half to say if I was going to accept this position. I had to pray. I had to talk to us around Thanksgiving. I had to pray. My family was actually at my house in Chicago. Talked to my family. They were all on board, or as much as they can be. And I accepted the position, and I've never looked back for the most part. As I'm sitting here in South Africa with no electricity right now. We have water, but there's no electricity. So
Oh my goodness, Taylor.
Yes.
Wow.
I'm okay. No, it's
It's the load shedding.
yes, load shedding. It is
Load
scheduled.
shedding.
Yes,
It's a thing.
but
it's
it
a
is a thing.
What is
Yeah.
load shedding?
where you like
It's-
at times where the electricity goes off, like just to, save.
Oh, okay.
Is it like a way to save energy or something, or like make sure that it's not ever
That's what
too
they
much?
say. That's what they say,
Okay.
but I just don't understand it in that way. But yes, ultimately.
And no generators?
I do have a generator, so if it's loud, you can hear my generator. I have an inverter.
Okay.
I don't have a full generator. I wish that
Gotcha.
my landlord would get solar panels, but maybe one day.
I mean, just even this part of the conversation, people don't get like.
I didn't know before moving to South Africa that this was going to impact my life in the way that it has.
Wow.
So it's been a learning curve for sure for me.
Wow. Thank you for sharing your journey, for sure.
Wow. So yeah, it's my turn.
Yeah.
So I have always had a love of travel. I love adventure. I love to just explore new cultures, new places. I've visited over 70 countries in my lifetime, and I've always known that I wanted to, at some point in my journey, live abroad and work abroad. And it just so happens that and when my career started, I was in the school system and I was like, oh my God, I love summers off. And one year went after the next, I was like, I'm gonna, it was a comfortable space just because I could travel, afforded me the opportunity to travel, to do the things that I wanted to do. And then the next time I looked up, it was, 20 years had gone by, and I said, well, I just can't give up my 20 years that I've invested. Let me try and push through the next 10 years. And so I said, I'll just go ahead and retire. And so when my 30th year came up, which was last September of 2022, I was talking to one of my colleagues and a very close friend of mine who we have another colleague and friend who had worked in the school system with me years and years ago. We happened to connect at our mutual friend's, her father's funeral. And this individual told me that she was going to be living abroad and, and as a psychologist. And I was like, are you serious? And so it just so happens that the place that she was going to, the school that she was going to work at had an opening for a counselor. So she just happened to text me and I said, oh, okay, wow. So this is my 30th year. I was eligible for retirement. And I said, I put it to the side for a minute. And then I said, let me just brush up my CV and, get my little stuff together. I said, this is what I wanted to do. And so I did. And I went on a trip to what I do to Turkey. And while I was in Turkey, I was contacted by the school to say, hey, we got your CV. We're really interested in you, to interview and get. I said, well, I'm going to go home and I'll interview when I get home. And they're like, no, we really want this to happen now. So, as we sisters do, my hair was not together. I had to figure out a plan. I didn't have professional clothing with me because I just was going for a few days to Turkey to just chill out and just be me. And so I had to go find the curling, I had to go find some stuff. What we do, it's fix it up. And it did, it happened. And, I ultimately was offered the job. And so, like Jamie said, things were lined up really fast. It happened so fast. It's like, okay, I gulped and I said, when I, got the job and everything, and I gulped and I said to my support network, it's like, wait, this just happened so fast. Can I meet the moment? So I wanted this to happen, but I realized that mentally, maybe I wasn't ready for it to happen like that. And so I had to rise up and meet that moment and say, because I have a home, I'm well established. I have, consulting gigs that I have a lot going on and just well established and professionally and otherwise. And so I had been talking the talk. Now it was time to, step up and to receive what I was, about to be blessed with, because I asked for it. And I asked God for it. And then I just talking about I'm not ready. And so I had to get my head together for that and just undo all my 30 plus years of living in a home and unpacking all that and just reshifting. It was a lot. And so, but I knew that it was opportunity for me to shift, because I knew that I was getting bored, and I knew that, I needed some freshness. And this is where I landed. This is my first post. I've been here. I'm wrapping up my first year, and I've learned a lot. I've learned a lot of what I want. I've learned a lot about what I don't want. Learned a lot about what works in this realm, what's going to work for me, what's not going to work for me. And so I'm really grateful to have made this connection with these amazing women. Like, sometimes God is so interesting. When you think he's sending you in one direction, it's a whole nother thing opens up. It's like, oh, okay. Maybe this was it, and so you just never know what he has in store for you. You just have to be ready to receive and embrace what he's about to bring you. So that's kind of my journey to being here, where I have landed.
Thank you. It's so uncanny. Mine sounds very similar to everybody's. I'd always wanted to live abroad. Ever since I was little, I was always talking about being international. And in school, I was going to study abroad in Barcelona. So I thought Spain was about to be it for me. It did not, materialize. But, working, teaching, being a counselor, getting my license. I used to be an assistant principal, and one of the teachers that worked on my team, she and her husband moved abroad, moved to China. A few years in, she was like, okay, we need a counselor. You want to come abroad? I'm just like, girl, I just started my license. I can't quit now. I don't like this school nor the people that run it, but I can't quit. But that next year, I was done with my licensure. I was trying to move, working in a very toxic and unhealthy environment, burnt out, depressed, all of that. And just wondering, like, what does the next step look like? Like, it cannot be this. I have worked too hard for this to be it. Prayed about it, and then I get the call again. My friend is like, okay, so we need a counselor. Are you ready? I'm here. I'm thinking I'm moving to Dallas. No, I'm from Houston, and Houston people don't be really moving to Dallas like that. But no shade to Dallas. But I was like, okay, let me just try. What could it hurt? I applied. I didn't even apply. I haven't applied to any job. I didn't go looking for any job that I've had abroad. That's what surprises me. I sent her my CV. She shared it with her boss. I had an interview a few hours later. They were on layover in Zanzibar on vacation for Chinese New Year. Hour and a half long interview. Interviewed a week later with the Chinese head principal and like the secondary principal. Got the job on my mom's birthday. And I'm like, okay, if this ain't the Lord showing, and it went quick, like I was just like, oh my goodness, that was fast. It don't never happen that quick. And my parents knew as soon as I told them, I was like, okay, so I have some news. My mom was like, well, I know you're going. And I'm like, you know, I am, because it's something that it's been in my spirit. I've been unsettled. I feel like I'm not connecting with life the way I need to here. And I believe that it's out there. And it has been like, it has not been without disappointment and struggle, but having been, and I never thought I'd be in China, and having been here for 6 years, I really feel like I am a woman of the world, and I can't see myself settling back permanently, at least back in the States, but I'm still trying to figure out what does it look like for me professionally out in the world as a mental health professional. So one thing I want to say, thank you for everyone sharing, you know, the impetus to your life abroad. And, you know, I've shared a few questions with you. And I want to ask you, as Black women, specifically clinicians in an international ecosystem, what impact do you believe that your presence, your knowledge, your expertise, your life experience has made on the institution, or plural, that you've been able to serve? Anyone can go.
I think for me, I feel like everything we touch turns to gold. I don't want to sound cocky or like overconfident, but I watch myself and even other Black people, whether they're male or female, anything that they do it with excellence. And I don't know if that's because we don't have the opportunity to ever be like mediocre or like not do things with that excellence, but I've seen women do amazing things. I remember when I first started in Qatar and I was at Jim's American Academy. I'm so thankful for that place now. But I remember it was a team of Black ladies that were across the entire spectrum of the school. So we were K through 12. And anything that they did, like it just enhanced, like they're still doing those things to this day. Like the way that they set up the curriculum, the way that they set up the student handbook. I created a counselor handbook. I created the graduation pathway kind of thing. Like there's so many different things that were not in place until we came in and said, with our expertise and our knowledge, this is not okay. This could be better. Let me make it better, right? And so that's just the experience that I've seen from my own personal experience and even observing others around me, whether they're at my school or a different school.
Yeah, for sure. Y'all can pop right in. I want to offer this. What I've noticed is that we are trailblazers and we are fixers. We can come in and spot how to start, improve, correct, build upon, and really systemize things. And I also believe humanize a lot of situations and interactions that may not actually lead with the human element of empathy. I'll just offer that for now.
I think
go ahead, Shirley.
Okay, so I think for me, oftentimes I can't talk about what it's like to be any other specific race, and so I can only bring my lenses and my like cultural experience of how I've navigated the world. But I think one of the things that I've observed, having been somebody that's like moved countries quite a bit, my mom's from a different country, my dad's from a different country, and, you know, having family and the concept of home in different countries, I've watched that the Black experience can sometimes be, you know, a marginalized experience, which automatically means you're somewhere on the fringes of something, looking in or looking out. And I think what that gives you is a vantage point and a view that maybe others might not have if from not being in some of those marginalized spaces. And it's not a comfortable space to be in, but I think it's a very informed space to be in, because you take on a different kind of learning, as I mentioned earlier. But I think for me, being a person of color and person that has moved around and has viewed, you know, different cultural groups and different, you know, like everything, different professionals, different children, different everything. One of the things that I start to do is I look for patterns. And, you know, maybe that's just like the TCK or CCK in me. That is, you know, when you move, you kind of just need to find things that you can go, okay, I recognize this, or I know this, I don't know that. And so I think actually that as a counselor and as somebody that's had like a marginalized experience, you kind of are quickly able to be a glue in ways that, you know, other people might not be able to, because you can see you've got a unique skill set of being able to see things and see the world in a very different way. And so, you know, for me, it was very similarly being the pioneer of like setting up everything, like literally everything from the pencils we use to the referral systems and all of that, but also bringing my own personal experience of having navigated different cultures to like the understanding of what it's like to interact with so many different people that might look like different to me, that might sound different, that have different cultural experiences. And I think the biggest metaphor I can think of is, whilst doing all the systems and the pattern making and all of that, it's more being the glue that kind of can see into things in different ways and like pull different things out of different people in ways that I don't want to say other people cannot, but I haven't often come across.
Yeah, I like that. We're the through line, right? We create these spaces for other people to land softly. Although the landing for us, I can speak for myself, is challenging, right? Coming in and chopping up stuff and, you know, critiquing and correcting and creating. And some people I've noticed, well, you knew, why are you doing all of that? Just put your head down and work. Well, first of all, I know what I'm doing and trust my judgment. I'm not going to steer you wrong. Right. And so that's often what I found is met from some factions with a bit of, why are you over here trying to make all these changes and stuff? Just let things be how they've always been. We are not born that way. We are not socialized to be go along to get along people. No Black woman that I know is that way. So I'll let anybody else that wants to offer their perspective on that question of how have you shifted the ecosystem, improved?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And being kind of a newbie at this, on this side of it, there's a different shift and there's a study period that I think has to happen. I think that cultures can systems can feel really threatened, people in systems where the status quo is very comfortable. Yeah. There is a tendency to, be okay with that. And, anybody wanting to change that it's uncomfortable. And so I feel like there does have to be a period of study and just step back and watch and learn. We have sharp eyes. We see a lot. We know how to unpack things very fast. And I am, I've always been, getting there, being a problem solver and, making things happen. And that wasn't my my world. That's just what I did. And I have been challenged with just pausing and learning and looking and listening. Because I know if I push through and power through and just go, it's going to be not received well, honestly, because it's a threat to status quo, and that's hard for people to receive, and especially from
us, the packaging.
Yeah, the packaging.
You know what? Thank you for sharing that, Taylor. If you want to respond, great. Give me just a second. But Anita, I want to. How do you balance? How have you been able to balance the knowing that something needs to change, knowing that you have probably the expertise to lead that change, but then balance that with, just pause, just wait and see. I don't know if I figured out yet how to balance those two dichotomies. I struggle with that. What would you say?
It's hard. It's very hard because you are it's contradictory to the person that you are and the professional that you are and what you've done all your life. I mean, I've been in this work for over 30 years, right? And so, just, well established. And so it's just, I mean, I have I talk about it with people that I trust. Finding that safe space, because you can't have that conversation with everybody. And so people with like minds having that conversation and who get it, and you don't have to explain it and prove it and, and break it down. They just get it, and so that helps. But it is, I mean, it's a daily struggle. It's a daily struggle. And you sometimes wonder if you're losing your skills, and you don't use it, you lose it. Knowing that that even though it's said that we want you want the skills, but when it's all said and done, don't do that. Because we good, we okay. The status quo is okay. Don't what you're doing is challenging it, and so that's. I mean, I'm living that right now. I'm living it, and each day that I get through it, it's different. It's a different way that I get through it.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm just when we met and had our opportunity to just connect on such a rich level, it really gave me hope. And to say, okay, there are people out there that know, they understand the struggle, and just, coming up, hearing, you just, the fresh perspectives, and, well, I'm doing it this way. Have you tried this? Have you tried? And just that is just the richness of that, and is what is helpful.
Yeah.
And that, we have our group chat, and somebody drops a jewel in a gem, has somebody ask a question, and it's just a response that's so quick. And so all of those are tools in the box for getting through each day with this challenge. This is a different space that I'm in, a very different space, professionally and, otherwise.
Thank you for being vulnerable and sharing that with us. I think we've all been stretched in certain ways through the work that we've chosen to do out in the world. And I believe wholeheartedly that it's valued. I just sometimes wonder if they aren't valuing who the expertise is coming from, because they know that it's good work. Like that's undeniable. And I don't know what that looks like. I don't know if there's a salve for that. And I don't know if that's our battle to fight. I'm not sure. I have, Taylor, did you want to respond, or I'm going to move to the next question?
Go ahead. You can go ahead. It's okay.
So this leads me right into like the next question. I don't want this conversation to only focus on challenges, but I'm also not one to sugarcoat the reality of the experiences that we're, living through. I am curious, what, and you share whatever you're comfortable with. What have been some challenges, either present or past, as an international clinician that you've been able to, work through, or at least identify the next step to get through it?
I'd say for me, and I don't necessarily think this challenge is just unique to this particular setting. I think it exists, I think, in every ecosystem or each school system that you spoke about. But I think just the general stigma around mental health and having to just constantly like break through those stigmas, because you represent, I find one of the challenges that I sometimes struggle with is managing people's expectation and understanding, and then the disappointments of what your role entails, but also like just mental health in general. And I think you almost have to be everything to everyone sometimes, and that can feel very exhausting. And I think one of the things I remember being, when we were training, one of the heads of the department used to say this term, and I didn't get it back then. She used to say, "Hi, I'm Carol, and I practice psychotherapy." And and I remember she kept saying that until it was, and I was like, "Why didn't you just say you're a psychotherapist? I don't get it. Like, what?" And she said, "No, because," and she'd been doing it for a really long time, and she said, "There's a difference. Like, that's you, but I'm also a human being, and I'm also a daughter and a mother and all of these things." And that time I didn't really get it until I think I remember just going into the field, like in like the initial stages, and like everyone just thinking you're just this mind reading problem solver of everything. And I used to just think, wait, what? You'd be standing at the petrol station when, the line choosing what popcorn to buy, and somebody would, you enter into conversation. And I think because I was somewhat a gregarious person, I was always willing to connect with people. But I found the minute they knew what I did, all the conversations just took on they just went off tangents. And I was like, this has never happened in my life before. Like, I'm normally quite good at like meeting and getting other things, but it just became, this role became this whole other thing. And like, just anything around mental health, I used to just kind of be like, so I stopped telling people what I did. And I said, "Oh, I work with children," and I would leave it open to interpretation, because I felt like it took on a whole other role for itself. So for me, that was one of the challenges, and I had to kind of like separate, like, who's Sherry Lee, the practitioner, the clinician, who's Sherry Lee, the friend, the any other like role that I feel, because I felt in the beginning it became really like it really meshed, and it was like just all this all-consuming thing. And it just meant that like you're kind of always like, I don't want to say on stage, but like, as soon as somebody knows what you do, you're on, like, everything about responses, everything about what comes out of your mouth, of your observations, what you can answer and what you can't answer, is just, you're just there. You don't often get to be, just not your role. It's like, I found the role it's like superseded all of me. And I somewhat resented that, because I'm like, no, there's other parts to me too. But I also was like, well, no, like I've taken this a really long time to decide to go down this path. And so maybe I'm supposed to be this all-encompassing person that can be calm and collected and empathic and, listen to you and hold. And I just, so that for me, I said two things, like the stigmas and people's expectations, and then kind of finding the human side of you in all of that. It was a really difficult thing. And I think the more you kind of are okay with who you are, the easier it is to kind of be able to set boundaries for like, what is you, the girl, you, the daughter, you, the clinician, you, the head of a department, you, the counselor, in that way, because sometimes it can just feel a little bit consuming.
Yes. Thank you for sharing that, for sure.
I can go. I think a challenge for me in this work, internationally specifically, is obtaining the trust and buy-in of the larger community, not necessarily the staff. The staff is always mostly amazing, but parents and such. So that has been, and it's not every parent, and it's probably not the collective parents, but the parents that are not buying in or trusting or allowing the experts to be and to do makes it very difficult and hard at times, because you then have to always, well, maybe you have to be intentional about the program that you do, but yet think about the handful of parents that are non-trustworthy to drive some decisions just to make sure that you're catering to all, and that for my department, for me, gain the trust. And so we can do the work that we need to do ultimately. So I think that has been a challenge for me.
Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, it is so good to have parents on your side. I would say that my situation is probably a bit opposite. I have some really good parent support, and then some of the educators that I work with, it is interesting. Not all of them, but I've noticed how the dissenting voices love to collect people against even the smallest improvements and initiatives. And that is very frustrating for me. And so it's kind of offset by the parents that have prestige and power afforded by other people, right? That are like, thank you so much, Ms. Heisen. You've really shown up. You've really helped me to, reconsider and see things differently. And I'm just like looking at the juxtaposition. How is this happening? But then y'all tripping on a referral form or stuff that makes absolutely no sense. And it's kind of it's a interesting space to be in. So I thank you for sharing that for sure. Anyone else?
I think what has been very difficult for me is maintaining my professional and personal ethics, and then what the country says it should be. So particularly around like child protection. I'm used to being back in Houston, where if I don't want to send a kid home because I know it is an unsafe environment, there are supports that I can reach out to make sure that that child is taken care of at least for 24 hours, right? Here, that does not exist. And for the most part, if you tap the wrong family, when I'm talking about the family name, and then they get the police involved, they look at you and say, who are you to say this is an issue? And that's a family matter. You need to step back. And you're just like, but this child is being abused. And you're telling me I have to send this child home to this abusive environment. And so that has been very taxing. I'm very lucky to have my direct line manager. She's the assistant principal of like the well-being, the child protection, inclusion, etc. And she's from Arizona. So we always have our moment. She's like, can I come on your couch? Can I come sit on your couch? Or I'll say, can I come sit on your couch? Because we're the only ones that understand and get it. So we have to kind of like vent and say, how do I get through this? Right. And so we kind of just hold each other's hands, but it is very taxing to know that you may be sending a child. And sometimes that child would then withdraw and go to a different school. So you don't even really know what happened to them. Right. And so when I think about how we're supposed to maintain that child protection as a counselor back in the States, or even through ISCA model, right? And then seeing that doesn't happen here, that has been very difficult.
Yeah, it is frustrating. It feels so good when you have a family that's all on board, right? That they're gonna go do A through Z to do the most appropriate support for their child. And then, as you're sharing, on the flip side, it's infuriating when you have someone that recognizes the issue. Like, we have to send our kids back into these unsafe, unsupportive, harmful situations, and we don't have a say. And I still haven't figured out how to reconcile that, honestly. I see a lot of supervision about that, honestly, because I get really angry. And then I'm wondering if y'all experience this too, that it then creates, at least for me, some sort of a like a disconnect. Like, do I even want to go as far as I know I'm supposed to go to support this kid?
Yeah.
If the proposed treatment is not going to be, not saying that I know everything, but if the proposed treatment isn't even going to be looked at or looked into, or if some shift in structure and behavior isn't going to change, I've lost a lot of sleep and worry about students that have openly shared that they want to jump off buildings and run in front of buses, and people laugh at that. It lights a fire inside of me that is very difficult to quell. And I'm wondering, when you all engage or experience these really difficult ethical challenges, how are you working through that? Like, what are the supports that you're accessing? How are you caring for yourself? Unmute.
You're muted.
I'm lucky. Sorry, thank you. How long have we been doing this? Since 2020. I'm lucky to have that support where at least I can go and voice, and I don't have to keep it bottled in how it's making me feel not to be able to help the student to the extent that I would want to. Another thing that I've done is I kind of find that gray area of, we don't do long-term counseling as a school counselor. And so I just kind of assign it as a different issue. I identify something else that's going on in their life so I can continue seeing that child and at least being that kind of safe place for them on the campus. But yeah, I'm like you. I don't know if I ever feel 100% like I'm good. No, I'm not. And I have lost a lot of sleep thinking about certain students and certain families, not even just the student, right? Sometimes the mom is involved with that. And so she's not protected. And I'm speaking from like this kind of Muslim culture that I live in. And so, yeah, it's difficult, but I think it's very important to have someone that you can really sort those dilemmas with, at least get it out, at least be able to vocalize it. But you may not have a solution, and you have to kind of become comfortable or okay with that. And then knowing that you want to kind of find a way to soften the blow with that student or that concern.
Yeah.
I think that to Jamie's point, we have to work within the structure of a country that, I mean, literally can send you back home if you say, if you have offended the wrong person, family. And I have a mantra that I live by when I worked in the States. All my career is what am I if what I'm doing, is it allowing me to sleep at night? Will I be able to sleep at night? That was always where I went to. And so have I done due diligence? Have I done everything that it possibly could be to protect children? And I really recognize, as Jamie has said, we're in a space that it's contradictory to that mantra, because we don't have the laws in place for that. And so that is, I love what she said, going to lay on somebody's couch who gets it. And understanding that, okay, it is a conflict with your professional and ethical values, and in some instances your licensure, which we protect with our lives, but being in this different space is just, it doesn't apply. Those same rules don't apply, and you have to just, when you're with people who get it, who know it, and we're having this conversation, we know that in another space, we wouldn't be having conflict with our ethics and our values because we are living under a different structure.
Yeah.
And that's, you have to just, you have to just recognize it every single day. I'm living in a different space. The laws don't apply here. And it's just like, what can be done to make the laws, to create laws? And it's just, it's bigger. I feel like it's just something that's bigger than us in this moment,
It is. So with that, if we are, because, the goal is to get more of us abroad, right?
Yeah.
And thriving, not just out here and, struggling, which is part of it. Let's just be honest. But how do we prep people for that? Like, how do we prep them for, as I asked this question, it just came to me, not really passing on our anxiety or our fear or our negative experiences, but would that be derelict of duty to not be honest about some of the very real situations that you probably will experience as a Black clinician going to these countries? Like, how do we practice that conversation? How do we prepare people that we think would do well abroad for this experience?
It's coaching and mentoring. You have to, I feel like I would have loved to have talked to somebody that, a clinician who was living here and living abroad and have, you've had that experience. But I think that it would absolutely, like, could we put that in place? Some kind of forum in place to say, if you're thinking about living abroad, here are some mentors you can connect with. Here are some coaches you can connect with who are clinicians. It's one thing to you're connecting with, maybe some Black educators, but it's different because we have a different set of standards.
Right.
And we have a different set of practices. And so you need somebody that is on that level of mental health, who are clinicians, not just, educators of color, but who know what that those challenges and unpacking those issues that present that are going to challenge your professionalism sometimes and your ethics, your professional ethics. So, and I appreciate you saying, not putting a negative spin on it, but being pragmatic and really understanding, giving people a view into our world.
Yeah, because it hasn't been all negative.
No.
There are definitely moments and pockets and some that I would rather not have experienced, but when we look at the totality of our experience, I can speak for myself. I think that I have most certainly grown as a clinician, a person, an entrepreneur, a woman, having taken on this journey. Like, my life would not be the way that it is now had I stayed in the States. So I'm wondering, what do you all, ladies, what do y'all think it looks like for us, as we're embarking in our own collective work, to support one another, to hopefully create a pipeline and some sort of apparatus to get more of us abroad? What would you suggest? I love the coaching and mentoring. I wrote that down. What would you suggest that looks like from our vantage point to those who are interested or who may not even be aware?
I think we probably should, I don't know how active you all are with your alumni association for your undergrad or grad school, wherever. But I feel like, as I'm thinking about that kind of coaching and mentoring thing, but like the recruitment aspect, I feel like we need to reach back to where we came from and speak to people about the possibilities, because a lot of people just don't know. When you think about international sector, you think oil and gas, engineering, business, and like a teacher. You don't think, oh, I could be a school counselor, or I could be a licensed professional counselor, I could be a global counselor. It's just not something that's really discussed, right? And so I think tapping into the people that are studying right now and about to graduate, just like I have job fairs for everything else, having a job fair for this international sector and giving them that kind of, this is the experience, this is what you can expect, this is how you can potentially impact change. I think that would be a critical thing to do. And then, of course, that's why we have the collective, right? So I feel like the collective is that starting point. I'm just saying.
Yes.
I
Do that plug.
One thing I would say is, like the collective and like discussions and platforms like this, where you can actually share your story, because one of the things, we all will come from different settings, will come from different ways in which we got to the junctions that we are. And then you do have to like take on consideration the different countries that we go to, or we are in currently. It's everything is different. It's part of that whole international kind of like leaping, where you kind of have to like realize. I remember when I first moved here, a lady who was from New York and moved to South Africa had told me this, and she was somebody that was unofficially mentoring me, and I had quite a few mentors at the time. I remember she just said, I'm going to tell you a line that was really helpful, and it wasn't necessarily just applicable to her professional work, but she just said in general, she said, this helped me and I'm hoping it can help you. And it's probably one of the most powerful things for me personally. Nothing too profound. She would just say this line. She would say, it's not wrong, it's not right, it's just different. There are things that are blatantly, against what your practices, your ethics, your codes are. But we also have to keep in mind that like different places are at different stages of growth and development, whether it's in licensing, whether it's in lawmaking, whether it's country-wise. And so that really helped me, because at first, I think when I first moved there, I was like, oh, that's wrong, that's not here, that, this is missing, this needs to happen. And then I found, we can come in with like sometimes, and I'll talk for myself, an all-knowingness of like, this is not what it, this is what we're told, and this is what it says, and this is not what's on the ground. And for me, the thing that helped me navigate was having weekly supervision, which I get. And then, having therapy. I was in therapy and I transitioned, and my therapist was my therapist 4 years after. So it helped me kind of be able to unpick and tease out that middle road of like, okay, it's not this, and I don't think it's that, but like, how do I meet in the middle, and how do I be able to do my job? How am I able to live here? How am I able to make an impact and a difference in a meaningful way when, there are things that are like complete night and day. And then also finding networks within your whichever cultural country context you're in, of other expats and other people that are having to navigate the same issues and the same dilemmas that are coming up for them, and then collectively trying to do that. So I think having your kind of like your hand back where you're coming from, and keeping you rooted with the people and the professionals that have helped you and help you go, okay, this is kind of where we should be at. But then also keeping in mind that their understanding, their learning, their practices, their standards work well because they're there. We can't always easily transfer that to whichever context we got, and we have to be mindful that everywhere's different, every country's going to be different, and navigating that is really challenging. Like it's a daily challenge, and each day looks different. It's like, okay, how's it going to be today? But having people within that context as well that you can co-navigate with is really helpful. And then I think also being willing to be vulnerable and to be able to tell your story authentically with, the good, the bad, the great, the ugly, and be like, this has been my experience, because I found that was really helpful to me. A lot of people hadn't told me things, and so you have to learn things by yourself. But I did have key people that were like, you know what, this is how you're able to apply for your visa, to get it authenticated in this way. And I'd say, oh, how was this particular thing? Like, how was church? Or how was, this in church? And I remember the lady, her name was Rita, and she was, she's very tactful in the way she did it. She was like, this has been my experience. And what that showed me is that like, I could take some learning from her, but I also know I'm going to be a very different person. I come from a different place. I have a different life experience, and I have a different worldview. And so I will take some of your learning and add it to my learning as I go, and just be open to the fact that like, there's going to be so many curveballs that are going to come at you.
Yeah.
You're going to just have to think on your feet, navigate those, and ultimately be as good enough, the best as you can. It might not be what it used to look like, but you can't, you can't. I think that's something that you have to make peace with to a certain extent. You do have to recognize yourself at the end of doing the work. You do have to stop and think, how am I doing the best for this particular child? Have I done my best for this particular child? And then navigate that space, because it's going to look very different, and it's going to be a unique set of challenges, expectations, practices for each case, or each child, or each family, or each context that comes up. And I think you have to see it in that unique kind of way, because otherwise you can just get really lost in the the lack or in the absence of things.
Right. Yeah. Thank you.
And you said something, Sherry Lee, about the supervision. And because, when you come into these international communities and these schools, there's a propensity for people to have to work in a silo. And I think particularly for those who are just entering the field and entering their career, starting their practice, it is so critical to get a supervisor, a clinical supervisor, not just a supervisor, but a clinical supervisor who can teach you about good practice. Because what happens is, I think because we were in these silos, people have a tendency to develop bad practice. And it gets perpetuated year after year after year after year. And you look up and you're like, what in the world's happened? But I think that if you're entering this space and you are isolated from other clinicians and practitioners who have, a good skill set, they have good clinical practices, you got to just try to connect with them and lean into that supervision and know how important it is and fully embrace it. I just don't do this thing without supervision. Don't do it.
And
there's just too many things that come up.
Yeah. And adding to that, making sure that your supervisor is culturally competent practices, cultural humility, is open to a variety of perspectives and has an underpinning of multiculturalism. To me, that has to be like number one. Part of the reason I became a supervisor is because there weren't many that look like me that can guide me in this space. I know that I used to work at a place, thank God I'm not there anymore, where my counsel partner made this comment, because obviously I'm in an Asian context, Chinese specifically, and the individual, the counsel partner that I used to work with said, we're fighting against this culture. And I looked and I was like, no, we are working within, we are collaborating with, we are trying to build bridges with the culture that you are a guest in, not fighting against a history and a culture and an established way of being that's been here longer than you've been alive. That to me feels very arrogant. And working with a clinician or a supervisor, a professional will help you to kind of unpack, I think, that egocentric perspective that sometimes I probably even fall into, like, why can't they just do X, Y, Z? And then I'm like, yeah, nix that way of thinking, because your way of thinking isn't right in this cultural context, or maybe not even right, isn't the most appropriate in this cultural context. So then what is, right? I really feel like that's one of the reasons that I'm so grateful for the group that we have formed and are expanding. It's for, like, especially the moral support that we've been able to provide one another that is often withheld or hard to find in these spaces. And so I want to ask, God, I wish we had more time. This is such a good conversation. I'm gonna go to the affinity group. When you think about, like, our mental health specifically, what is the case that you can make for having an affinity group of like-minded clinicians, or even in our own schools, right? What do you think that would be beneficial for students, for teachers, for us as mental health professionals? What would you say?
It's necessary at times.
I heard that before.
But no, putting jokes aside, it's essential. I think in order to function, in order to be sane, to stay sane, you have to create those affinity groups, because when, you know how we talk about you can't pour from an empty cup. That's a very common thing within the counselor world. It's true. And so by having that affinity group, I feel like that's how you get filled up. You're constantly filled up. And so then you'll have that overflow, and it'll only make you better for your students, for your community, for your parents, whoever you're working with in this context. So I think you need to create and find those affinity groups in order to have a way to be poured into, so that way you can then release and help others.
Touche. I agree.
I think it's also important for the practice of being seen and being understood. You know, I think for me, particularly, like I think that is the biggest thing, because I like to think, oh no, like there's a group of people that understand my unique or experience, and they see me, and they see me, and if anything, they are kind of like my cheerleaders, because sometimes you don't always have that. You don't always have people that like will see the best in you and then try and cheer you on. If there's things they can help with, they will. And an affinity group just allows you to kind of just, okay, like I feel seen, I feel heard, I feel understood. And for me, understanding is such an important thing, because it just allows me to then show up fully and authentically as who I am, and know that that's enough. And then because of that, I can learn from other people, they can learn from me, and then we can create like a community and a connection. And I think we all long for places where we're seen, we're understood, we can connect, we are valued, and what we bring is important. And I think that's what an affinity group is for me. It's kind of like the wind beneath the wings.
Yes. Yeah.
I think that to all that, yeah, snap. The affinity group for me, what's really important is that I can come and be vulnerable. I can share my mistakes without judgment and without fear of having that, that being, having your vulnerability being exposed. It's just a bubble. It's a bubble of safety. And I absolutely agree. It's absolutely critical. I think that, when you're in these communities, in your professional world, no one wants to make mistakes, but we're human. And sometimes that's not allowed. Humanity is not allowed for some. And so this is just it's necessary to have that space to be human, and to be pumped back up and sent back out, and and say, hey, when you fall again, come on back, we got you.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I agree with everybody as well. I think that I've been intentional to seek out the affinity groups in China and in South Africa, just because as a single Black female, it can be lonely, right? And so in order to be seen and heard, I think that is absolutely necessary to have those groups, so that you do have a little bit of safety, comfort, and you have somebody that you can really, or people that you can really, who understand you. And then when you do make your mistakes, then you can talk through whatever that may be, or if you need anything, absolutely, actually, it just helps. It makes life in this international world, even outside of the international world, even back home, it just makes life tick. Like, I think that it's just absolutely essential.
Yeah. I think it's important, right? One thing I find to be challenging is providing mental health support to expats here. I find it to be a bit more difficult to connect, because I don't want to be out and party and live life with people that I've seen at their lowest. I don't feel comfortable, just me, myself, and the expat communities are so small. And I don't want anyone to ever feel like there's any impropriety on my part. Because as Sherry Lee said earlier, it's hard to escape. Like, when lay people don't understand that my profession is psychotherapist, not that I am a psychotherapist. That's even a distinction that we have to learn to make ourselves, I believe, extrapolating the two. It's very difficult for other people to, why are you out here doing all of this? You know, you're supposed to be ABCD. That's what you can think that. However, I am a human trying to live my life within the confines of the world that, you know, I live in. And it's just difficult to have to feel like you got to explain all the time, or people looking and whatever this and whatever that, or don't have a bad day, right? Or don't struggle with your mental health. Because I'll speak for myself, it's been challenging to have these dualities. Like, you're the professional, you're the clinician. Are you even supposed to feel like this and experience these things? Full well knowing, yes, you are. So having the affinity group, I mean, you all know that I shared with you a few weeks ago that there were people at my job calling me a diversity hire, and how that just really kicked me in the gut and hurt me. And I'm sitting here thinking, like, I shouldn't have even been upset, but then I have to recognize why not. When it's people judging me, they don't know jack, you know, about me as an individual or the work that I'm doing or how passionate I am. And so for me to be vulnerable enough to bring that to you all and receive the kind of support that I did, I am the utmost of grateful. And I know that I wouldn't have that support here in the country that I'm in the city that I'm in. That's not available, because women that look like, there are not a lot of women that look like us doing what we do here in Beijing, and the people that are, we are not of the same mind and understanding in the way that we live our lives, which is fine. And I can't share these things with clinicians of different cultures because they don't understand. So I am very grateful, one, that we've all been able to meet and connect and stay connected and offer support and resources and sounding boards and unconditional support. It makes the job that much more easier with all of its integrated challenges. So I have just a few more questions. I really wish this conversation could go on longer, but I want you to think about, I'm trying to look through the ones which I want to bring up. You know, what advice would you give to somebody that's wanting to do what we do? What would you say?
I would say be open to embracing the world in a different way and experiencing a gamut of emotions and feelings. Fear, courage, vulnerability, change, all things that you'd have to become acquainted with on the journey, and give this whole experience a chance. Like, I think when I first got here, I was like, oh, this is not like home. I miss my family. I miss my friends. Everything's different, blah, blah. Within 3 months, I was like, yeah, that's not going to work. But I realized that when you move, it's, there's a settling period, there's the learning, there's the observation period, there's, you've got to give it a chance. So my biggest advice would be like, you'll know if something's for you and if it's not for you, but you are literally like transporting yourself to a whole realm of difference. And so be open to the fact that, you kind of have to give something a chance and be willing to put yourself out there and connect. It's not, you do kind of have to, meet new people and and find networks and find support. And then the thing that my friend told me, it's not wrong, it's not right, it's just different. That would be my little takeaway.
Thank you.
I think it's important to identify, am I still muted? No, okay.
No, you're good.
I think it's important to identify at least 2 or 3 things that are near and dear to you that'll kind of give you a piece of home. And so for me, it was like trying to find a church I love coffee. So finding a coffee shop that I could go sit in and maybe read or just, chill. And then an indoor cycling class. So my first 3 months, that was like the three things that I had to identify and find, because that way, no matter what else was happening at work or, getting adjusted to the country, et cetera, at least I knew I had those three things. And that could be for anyone, not even just going international, even if you're moving domestically from state to state in the States. I think it's important to identify those three places because, again, kind of tying into the affinity group, right? You're around like-minded people. It's something that you enjoy. It's something that you can look forward to. And so I think that's one of the main things I would say. It helps keep you grounded, but it also gives you a little piece of like your routine or what you did back home.
Yeah, thank you. That makes me think I need to join the gym.
I would say making sure that you have a support network. And it can be, I mean, obviously, when you move somewhere, anywhere, you might not know anybody. So just until you get that network where you're moving, just make sure that you have a couple of people that you can go to because it is a rocky, bumpy, wavy ride. And just being able to connect to the people that feel like home is crucial. And for me also, like I have been, therapy has been essential and great for my actual well-being abroad. But even when I was back home, like I think that is something that keeps me ticking and allows me to actively grow and being able to process whatever is going on in life. So I think those two things for me.
Agreed. I love my therapist.
I think you have to always remember your why. Why am I here? Why did I do this? What drove me here? I mean, because that will help you to stay centered and focused. And so remembering your two things, remembering your why, and then having that, Jamie, that toolkit and that bucket. I have a bucket of 50 things, 50 tools in there because each day looks different. And one day that tool might not work for what I've experienced today. And just being able to, I need to have a menu of items I can pull from in the moment. So I think it's those two things is that what drove you here? And keeping that in the forefront of your mind.
Yes. Yeah, I'm writing all these things down to help further the work that we're going to do as a collective, just in case you're wondering. What would I say? I would say, one, what's your goal, right? What's the outcome? What is the reason that is driving the decision? What are you seeking? And as everyone has said, what supports and resources do you need are available that's going to help you to on each leg of this journey? And I think another one would be to spend limited time with people that want to break down your decision, that want to dissuade you from making such an important life move, like transition in your life, that is definitely going to help you grow if you approach it in a mindful manner. Spend time with those people that may not necessarily agree, but are going to be supportive of the decisions that you make and your autonomy. And again, everything else that y'all said, take care of yourself, create a plan for care. I think I struggle with that sometimes, but that's my own stuff. Get a therapist for sure. We can help you with that at some point in the near future. I want to ask y'all, I have maybe like two more questions. I love this question. In what ways do you believe you've expanded as an individual, as a clinician? Are those things the same? Are they separate? What would you say? I love the
That's
thought.
a big one, Kendall.
I'm Listen, this y'all first time on the podcast. I be asking them blockbusters.
I think personal, like my personal kind of thing, growth is learning to trust myself, and that in the sense that I used to be very fearful of like that failure, or fearful of showing imperfection, fearful of not being enough, things of that nature. And so being here out here solo dolo, like did not know a single soul when I moved here. I realized like you can trust yourself. Like you make good judgments, you make good decisions. Your life you're going to be okay. And so just personally, that has been huge for me. Because like I said, when I was in Texas, I lived in a box. I wanted to follow like this little regimen, right? What they said, you do it this way in this order. And so coming here, I kind of let that go. And I just kind of allowed life to kind of, yes, you want to have goals. Yes, you want to have some type of direction, but also just trusting that it's going to be okay and you will be okay. Professionally, learning how to like get real creative in how you navigate things. Like, I don't know. It's been a very interesting experience. I've also learned how to navigate different academic curriculums. So I started out in American curriculum, and it also had AP, the advanced placement through College Board. But now I'm in an IB school, and that's a whole nother world. And so I feel like my resume now is so robust that the world is my oyster, because now what angle you want me to come? You want me to be a middle school counselor? You want me to be a college counselor? Like, I got you, because I've had that whole spectrum. Whereas in the States, you're kind of going to be within one kind of niche and you're going to stay there. You're either an elementary counselor, middle school counselor, or a high school counselor. That's it. Whereas here, I've gotten a more broad range. And so I feel like I'm more marketable now when it comes to international school counseling.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, everybody has to answer this question. I'll go next. I think one of the ways that I've expanded personally, and this expansion is definitely an ongoing process, is one, trusting myself. That's my word of the year, is trust. Because I it's like I know, and this is an exercise of vulnerability for me right now. I know that I'm really skilled. However, I think my perfectionistic tendencies and sometimes my struggles with ADHD as an adult, and my self-limiting beliefs really get in the way of me being able to execute on all the ideas. I mean, y'all have seen me in action, right? All the stuff that just popped into my head, it can be really overwhelming. So trusting myself to like pace myself, right? And knowing that failure is part of the process. It is not the end. And I get to determine what that means for me, right? So really just shifting the way that I'm thinking and looking at the things that I want to put out into the world and the confidence that I have for myself is something that I've really, really grown. And I still feel like I have a long way to grow. But I kind of want to get out of my own way. I'm learning how to get out of my own way and trust myself a bit more in my abilities. And I'd say professionally, through learning this, I know that I am capable of teaching other culturally competent counselors that want to do this work, that want to work in a different culture, how to be caring and empathetic and ethical. And that I want to continue to share the story. That's why the podcast exists, is this is a level of advocacy for us, right? To be able to man our own narrative. Other people do not get to share the narrative for us. We get to construct that for ourselves and tell the truth and let the world see that, again, we are thriving abundantly everywhere. So really just offering more opportunities for us to be in the limelight and to share the things that we're doing around the world. is something professionally that I think I've been able to expand myself on, which links right back to being able to trust myself that no matter what it looks like in the moment, the seeds are being laid and the roots are being formed. So I'll say that.
I would say individually, I think the thing that I've learned, I think my whole life, like when I spoke about the being on the fringes, I think one of the things I've done throughout my childhood, I was looking back at some childhood photos, and there was always a photo of me, like, you know, if somebody had a headache, I'm like stroking them or like hugging them, like, and it really stood out to me that I was like looking after people long before I was looking after people like professionally and officially. But I think this whole process has been a solo journey, and because it's been a solo journey, it's meant I've had to, you know, really be more and more comfortable within my skin, with the sound of my voice, with what I bring to, you know, whichever proverbial table, with my unique experience being different to anybody else's. And that has resulted in making sure that I do not leave myself off the things to do and the looking after and leaving myself behind, and, you know, trying to like naturally, like, I think I'm a people gatherer in terms of like, I love connect. I don't even know if I love it, I've just always done it, like, you know, look to connect people. But I think I'm learning through this experience that, you know, it's okay to actually be connected, and while you're doing that, and not like always so acutely aware of the need of everybody else around you. Because I think sometimes I'm good at like, you know, trying to like, oh, this person needs this person needs that, but then I just kind of don't often vocally say, okay, this is what I need. And it requires vulnerability, and sometimes I've been like, I don't always know if I can be vulnerable in this particular space with this particular person, whether now I'm just like, no, I can, this is what I need, and this is what I'm going to do, and this is what I want, and this is what I don't want, and no, I don't like that, and yeah, I do. And, you know, that's been a very new experience for me, because I just think, yeah, whatever each person brings to any kind of conversation has some value, and I will try and take away the value I can from any conversation, but I have to recognize that I bring value to the space I occupy, the seat around a table, the conversation, the, you know, the discussion, whatever it will be. And then professionally, it's been moving solely from like just expanding my skills, like in my clinical work, but actually realizing that, well, there's other avenues that I didn't realize I've been doing and I didn't really want to do, but here I am in terms of like the managerial side of things and managing people, but also managing spaces and the different like bureaucracies and just things around that. And I thought, if you had told me that that's what I was going to do, I was like, no, I know I don't want to do that. But I'm like, oh, but look, you've been doing it, and I can do this and I can do that. And it was only until I was talking to my supervisor, she said, oh, you know, if you move, you'd be in a great position to start up a counseling service here and do this and that. And I was just like, right, like I've been doing that. And it's like listening to somebody acknowledge what you're just, you know, you're kind of head down getting the work done in whatever work springs up, that you don't always stop to acknowledge that, hold on, like you're actually amassing a massive skill set that you can take everywhere you go, anywhere you go, and it's all valuable and it's all meaningful. So I think kind of like letting those two sit and just stopping and acknowledging like, yeah, this is me.
Yes.
I think for me, I'm quite similar to Shirley, actually. I went abroad when I was in my early 30s, and now I will be almost 40 soon-ish. I've got a year. And so that allows you to grow and find comfort in who you are and allow yourself to be confident in that. And so that's one of the things that I've had to do through this experience, because this is simply who I am. I am always trying to work on myself. I'm continuously doing work. I'm listening to podcasts, reading books, doing therapy. But just being able to be present and allowing myself to truly be who I am and not caring what the outside chatter is or what they say or who what that looks like. And then professionally, coming from a large public district to a small, tiny school. One of the good things about my first experience in China was I was allowed to, a couple of the years, I was allowed to focus solely on social emotional counseling, which I had never been able to do in a large district, right? There are needs, there are big needs, but we as counselors didn't get to focus on that. So that allowed me to really grow in that way. And I still get to wear that hat here, but I wear multiple hats here. So I focus on it a little bit, but that has really grown and expanded within my practice.
Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, I'm not going to work anywhere else that I can't just do social emotional counseling. Y'all don't want me as nobody university counselor because I'm going to mess somebody's college application. I'm just being honest.
All right, my turn. Ask me this in a year. I'm just kidding. So, personally, I've always been, this kind of my personal and professional is blending together in a sense, in that I've always been a workaholic. And I do a lot of different things. I have lots of balls in the air, and I'm just constantly, when I was in the States, just constantly moving and going from one thing to the next. And so I've done a lot of different types of social work, and I would be, one in a day, I could be dealing with all of them, all the different types. And it's really very, very high pressure and very intense. And I'm just moving and got all these balls in the air. And coming away from that has given me an opportunity to just breathe, stop and breathe. And I'm just going to be vulnerable for just a moment. I lost my mom several years ago, and one of the things that she said to me on her during her dying process is that you work a lot. And that was always in my mind. She says, I need you to just, you gotta just balance it a little bit more. And that was always in my mind, but I was just always just making things happen. Just getting that, that juice from, rocking and rolling like that. And coming here has given me that opportunity to pause and to stop and to get rid of all the noise and to just zero in on self-reflection, zero in on my vulnerability, zero in on, where am I? Where do I need to go? What's happening? Jamie, you said something to me when we were meeting in Bangkok, to us. He was like, coming here is just, you have so much time. It's so quiet. It's just space. And I've never had space and quiet like that. And that's been an opportunity it's been a growth point for me. And I've been receiving it and being okay with it and being in that, just being right here and just breathing. So there's that. And then the other piece is in terms of growth, which again goes professional and in personal, is giving myself permission to make mistakes. This is a new space for me, even though I've done this work, I've mastered it, been very good at it. But recognizing that in this new space, I'm making mistakes and being okay to say, mistakes don't define you. What can you take away from this mistake? Where are you going? What are you going to learn from it? What you're going to do with it? So it's a lot with that. And so I feel like that hits both personal and professional. And so that's kind of where I am in terms of where I feel like growth has happened and growth is continuing.
Yeah.
I'm curving.
Thank you for being vulnerable with us. Thank you for all of you for sharing such intimate, parts of yourselves and sharing with the world your journeys. I am really grateful for all the wisdom. I wish we had 2 more hours. Unfortunately, I want to honor your time, but my last question is, when you think about the best hopes for international counseling, getting more, and now my throat acting up, Black clinicians abroad. My apologies. What does that look like? And how can we follow your journey? I'm going to mute myself right now.
Kendall, can you say the question again? I'm sorry.
When you think about a best hope you have for getting more of us abroad, like what would that look like? And how can we follow your journey as you continue to live abroad abundantly?
I'll go. y'all just, I don't want y'all to sit there and just dead silence. So I would say my hope is that there's more of us. I hope to start being in schools and then there's like 2 or 3 Black counselors, not just one. I hope that we also can find a way to create that kind of private counseling in these different regions, because I think there's a need for that as well. Because when we think about work as school counselors in particular, I wish I could refer these students out to someone that looks like them in the region, not virtually. And then as far as following my journey, I am being forced to reactivate my Instagram because it's just the way of the world now. So you can follow me. It's Jamie, J-I-M-E-L, Roya, R-O-Y-A. And that'll be kind of where I have my professional international school counselor space. And then also on LinkedIn, if you want to connect with me on LinkedIn, it's my full name, Jamie LaDon Roya. I'm becoming a little bit more active on there as well, because I see that that is how you can progress professionally, especially in the international sector, and offering that visibility of what you do and how you do it. And so those are the 2 places you can follow my journey.
I think it's really interesting because when I thought of that question, I thought, well, I don't really want to be like, I didn't want to be on Facebook. I didn't want to be I had to get onto everything when I moved here. And I was like, well, how do I do this without like being on this? So like, you can follow me on any of them, but I'll tell you now, like, you probably would discover me more through Kendall if she was doing something and she called me in, because I really admire and I love how vulnerable and how open and far-reaching your platform is, and it's really given me food for thought in terms of like, how can I do that, but also like still not have to do that. Still trying to navigate that. When I know, I'll be able to give you that answer. But I think in terms of allowing for more people of color to be in these positions all over the world, I think things like this, like sharing our stories, I think to me, story is such a powerful tool, and it's the one thing that you have mastery over, your own story and whatever it took to get you where you are. And I think anybody that can gather any form of information or any like gold from the Midas touch that everybody has everywhere is helpful. So I think platforms like this, platforms like the ones that we'll be promoting soon, will be the places in which you can kind of learn about people's stories. Because I think when we can show up vulnerably, when we can be like, hey, this is who I am, this is what it's looked like for me, this is what I've learned, this is what I haven't, I think that to me will, give people more of access to us than possibly just like, professional CVs and stuff like that. But I think in the way of the world, like Jamie was saying, you do have to be active on some of the more professional websites and settings. But I think I'm more like the story person. So I'm just like, I want to know, what do you like and what don't you like, that kind of thing. I can read you all of that, but I'm like, yeah, but are you a nice person? And do you smile when you talk? And what's your family like? So for me, it would be stories and platforms like this.
Yeah, I'm not on anything. Find me on Kindle Space. She's gonna work with me though. I feel like she's gonna push me beyond my little comfort zone here.
Yes.
So we'll see how that unfolds.
Yes, for both of y'all. Taylor.
I am on Instagram-ish. I have an account. I'm not as active on that account, but I do have an account. I don't know what happened to my LinkedIn. I thought I had it when I moved abroad. I think I deleted it. Is that really a big thing now? Do I need to get a LinkedIn account? Okay. So I will create a LinkedIn account. And yes, I am hopeful that, yes, there are more Black clinicians, because I find it very difficult even here in South Africa, that we can't refer our students to, there's maybe 2 or 3 in the network, maybe. And of those 2 or 3, they're not actually South African. So I don't know. So it's very difficult. So yes, I hope that somehow, some way, and we will get more Black clinicians in the circuit internationally and everything.
Yes. I want to say thank you. Everybody knows how to follow me. Please follow the podcast, The Black Expat Experience, on Instagram. Please join the email community at aspirecounselingwell.com. I'm trying to grow that as well. My biggest thing is that we continue to support each other. That is my biggest hope, is that we create avenues for each of us to expand ourselves, to share our stories. We come from cultures that are narrative based, and that's how we build trust, is when we get to hear about you and your experience, as Shirley was saying. Excuse my throat. So that would be my hope. That is how you can continue to partner in the work and be on the lookout for the great things that as a collective we have coming up. And I know that the hour is long. That's my Baptist church right there. And so I just want to say thank you to everybody for tuning in, and especially to my amazing guests today for sharing your time with me. Please continue to tune into the Black Expat Experience. We are growing slowly but steadily. I encourage everyone to keep taking risks in their lives, keep impacting your communities, and above all, make sure that you're prioritizing your mental health. Please share in your communities of influence. And with that, I want to say thank you again to my guests and everyone else out there. Be well and take care. Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
All right, ladies. Oh, wait, I'm still live on YouTube.
You still live?